Conversation with State Representative Jim Struzzi, brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. He's in Harrisburg right now, probably quite ready to be done with Appropriations Committee hearings. He's been hearing people toss numbers at him now for a couple of weeks. Representative Struzzi, good morning.
Good morning, Todd. Thanks for having me on.
That's my pleasure. Do those numbers induce a headache or two? Because there sure seem to be a lot of them flying your way.
Yeah, it's quite the process. Today wraps up our budget appropriation hearings. We've been going at this for 3 weeks now. There is a lot of numbers, a lot of information that gets exchanged, but it's really, at least from my perspective, a very interesting, a very revealing and educating process. You really have the opportunity to dig down into these budgets, to dig down into these various state departments, learn how they tick, and make sure that they are properly funded for what's important for Pennsylvania residents.
Well, one of the interesting things about it to me is that there's very, very ample opportunity for people to look at the way the state is spending money and to say, well, that's wasteful and this should be spent better over here. You get a chance to actually dig into what some of these numbers are and what these agencies are telling you. Have there been things that have surprised you or that maybe would surprise us to know about the budget process and how these agencies come up with their figures?
Well, I think there's been a lot of surprises this time around, Todd, especially coming out of the pandemic response. There was a lot of money spent, possibly misspent, mismanaged, and that's the kind of thing that we go through this process to reveal. And as we do find those things, we have the opportunity to question these secretaries and then make those adjustments for this coming budget. Did you overspend? Did you not spend? Why didn't you spend? Why did you spend it on this or that? Those are the kind of questions that we ask. And we do find a lot of interesting responses. And a lot of times, these state departments are so huge, particularly the Department of Human Services, which we had all day yesterday. They had $941 million basically in an overspend supplemental appropriation last year. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, you have to put your finger on that at some point and say, that's not how you properly budget. So we had a lot of questions about that yesterday. And obviously, Human Services is a very different type of agency because you do have to provide services that people need. But the question is, if you know that people are going to need this, and it seems Human Services does this every year, then you should appropriate that at the beginning of the year, not come back at the end and say, well, we overspent by almost $1 billion, help us fill that hole.
Yeah.
That's not how proper budgeting should work.
Yeah, obviously. And that is one of those areas that it's a headache every year trying to figure that formula out because it is such a huge umbrella under which they operate. And there are some others that you wonder about every single year. The turnpike becomes something that is a part of the budget discussion, if only for the fact that we have to find ways to keep that highway going and at the same time maybe not have the annual increases that are scheduled. I mean, that's part of the whole turnpike schedule. The turnpike is one thing. State police protection has been an issue over the last few years. And all of those things come up before your Appropriations Committee. And I'm sure that you're hearing a lot of the same things you've heard in previous years, and there haven't been the changes that you think need to happen.
Well, no, there haven't. And it's unfortunate that the governor's administration continues to go down the path of tax increases and increasing burdens on small businesses and families. That's not really a solution to help us balance this budget. We see, again, a lot of the same themes that we've seen over the past few years that simply aren't going to go anywhere. So we really need to start looking at more innovative ways, not ways that crush businesses and push people out of this Commonwealth. And that's one of the things that we've also seen through the course of these supplementary or budgetary hearings, Todd, is, we have suffered extreme losses due to the pandemic, due to the lockdowns, due to the business closures. As part of my questioning of the Secretary of Labor and Industry, I asked her how many permanent job losses are we seeing because of these lockdowns and business closures, and the astonishing number is 500,000. Wow. 500,000 jobs permanently lost, 500,000. So, at a time where we're seeing job losses like that, where people are struggling, where people still can't get unemployment. I mean, my email every day has people begging, pleading for help to get unemployment because they can't get it because the system is simply broken. and then you want to turn around and talk about raising the personal income tax, raising the minimum wage, all of these different things that place additional burden on small businesses and families and the economy. It doesn't make sense.
No. Okay. So these budget hearings will wrap up today. And I believe you're doing state government today, aren't you?
We have the budget secretary today.
Budget secretary, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the administration. So you'll be talking about that today. And then this will wrap up for you. The Senate then will begin their appropriations hearings. Eventually, those will end, and it'll be time to start crafting it all together. How does
that's exactly. Yes, go ahead, Todd.
How does that process work from there?
Well, we'll be back in the district next week to catch up on all the things we need to do in our home districts, and then we're back for a regular voting session in the House the following week, and then we will meet as an Appropriations Committee, and we'll review everything that we learned through the process of the budget hearings. We'll look at all the notes and transcripts and numbers, and then we'll sit down and basically start to craft our own budget based on where we are with revenues, where we are with some of the responses that we got for some of the programs and different things from the various agencies. And then that process will continue with the Senate doing something similar with their Appropriations Committee. Then we kind of mesh those together, and then there's a lot of negotiations with the governor's office, with all sides of the General Assembly. And eventually you hope that you can get to a consensus on a solid, balanced budget.
Do you anticipate that when a budget is finally crafted together that we'll have to split it like we did last year, or that we can do the whole thing by June 30th?
I believe the plan is to do the entire 21-22 fiscal year, Todd.
All right. Well, then that work is going to have to get done, and it's going to take a lot more of effort to get it done, and you're going to be a part of that whole process. Meanwhile, other things are happening in Harrisburg, and I know there are some big-ticket items that you'd like to see happening. What are some of the things you want to focus on over the course of the next 6 weeks or so?
Well, I'm working on a lot of different pieces of legislation right now. I did just introduce a bill to help our intermediate units. They were the only educational entity that was not included in the last round of aid. And so that's something that we have to address. So I did introduce legislation that basically if and when the federal government approves another COVID relief package, this will be a vehicle for us to funnel some of that money to help our intermediate units. Also doing something similar for entertainment venues. Those are, concert facilities, things like that, like the Cavalcid Complex and some of those entities that weren't included in any of these funding packages previously. And that will help some of them to survive because, without the music industry, without entertainment, it's not going to be good for our long-term culture. So they've reached out to me to ask for some help. So I'm working along those lines. Introducing other bills. There's a couple that I'm working on that will help our economy. I don't want to reveal too much until I put it out there because it's still working on the co-sponsor memo, but one of them will be to help disadvantaged businesses, specifically in underserved areas like Indiana County, and I'm partnering with my fellow Representative Jim Rigby from Johnstown. We're working on that together to try and have more state procurement contracts come from areas like Indiana County that are designated as hub zones. And so a lot of big things in the work, Todd. I've been here. This is my third year in office now. And you really get to understand the lay of the land down here, and building those relationships is key. Working with our leadership to make sure that we're pushing the right kind of bills that help our economy, that help our families, and we're really rolling up our sleeves. So I have continued to stay deep in the pool with both feet and push for things that really help.
It seems that from whether you're talking budget hearings or other avenues, everybody wants to get us an answer, a solution to the broadband issue in Pennsylvania. Are we getting nearer to the point where everybody in the state is going to have access to broadband?
I think that we are, yes. If there was anything that was highlighted by the COVID pandemic and the shutdowns and the children being forced to stay home from school, was the need for high-speed rural broadband. And that's something that's a top priority, that has been a top priority. And, I have to applaud our county commissioners and our county planning director, Byron Stauffer, and Senator Pittman. We've been working on this for some time now. We were able to make some some great strides using some of that relief money to expand broadband in Indiana County. We have a long way to go yet. And as a matter of fact, that's one of my questions for the budget secretary today, because they are proposing to expand the RCAP grant program, the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program, to include broadband projects. So I'm going to ask for some more details on that, because that would obviously be beneficial to places like Indiana County and those rural areas. If you could apply for grant money to expand broadband, that would surely help reach some of those areas where we don't have it now. So that is definitely a priority.
All right. Well, those talks continue. You'll have one more day of those hearings, and then a safe drive home, we presume. Representative Jim Struzzi, thanks so much for being with us here this morning. Have a safe trip home.
Thank you, Todd.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.